Thank you, everybody, for joining us for our 2023 Motherhood panel. This event started a couple years ago and has always just been one of WIA's favorites because it is something that doesn't often get covered in a lot of different forums, but yet so many people go through it. There's so much information that can be shared and learned from others. So we hope you enjoy it. We are calling it this year is Movement in the Workplace. Are you in the right place for your right now? Of course, we always want to thank our sponsors, Artesian Hardwood Floors, Michael Schuh Office of Architecture, Skelly Build, Gustavo Bernal, Photography, Videography, and Education, McKinney York, Page, Saluna Builders, Pilgrim, Gensler, and Legacy Lighting. And I just realized we don't have our mission up here. And if I stop sharing it, it'll all go away. Carina, can you read it real quick? Are you there?
Yes, sorry, I had to remember I was on mute. Okay. Yes, oh shoot, hold on, I have it here somewhere. But yes, the Women in Architecture mission is to promote, validate, and illuminate the role of women within the architectural field through fostering community, fellowship, education, and outreach.
Perfect. Thank you. I thought it was on the last slide, so I apologize. All right. Well, we have a great lineup today, and I'm going to pass it off to Jennifer Woods to talk through the individual women that are on our panel.
Thanks, Ashton. Actually, do you mind reading, if you go to the next slide, can you just read through Jennifer's introduction about her?
Of course. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Jennifer Woods is a senior associate at Page, where she had worked for the last 8 years. She fulfills many roles on her project teams, such as project architect, project manager, and construction administrator. Her primary market sector focuses on, or has been in technical sciences for higher education organizations and corporate commercial clients. She leads the professional development training for the Austin office and often serves in a mentor role for new Page hires early in their careers. In 2022, she started volunteering time with the Women in Architecture subcommittee, serving as the Spotlight Series coordinator and Motherhood panel coordinator. She does an awesome job at both. When she's not working, Jennifer enjoys spending time with her family, her husband, Ryan, who loves barbecue and sports, her daughter, Olivia, who loves breakfast and being mom's mini. We can confirm that. We've gotten to meet her many times and she is delightful. And also Jennifer's golden doodle, Theo, who loves socks and long walks. On any given weekend, she can be found exploring Austin's parks, preferably one with a playground for Olivia, checking out local festivals. The Budo Wiener Dog Festival, I think, might have happened this weekend or this week. So that's pretty awesome. And she also enjoys cooking a meal to share with friends.
Thanks, Ashton. So we'll go ahead and introduce the 4 women we have today on our panel. And we will start with Jacqueline. Jacqueline Dudley is an associate and integrated project leader at the Beck Group. She manages projects from the start of design through construction completion and is currently working on Beck's 600 West 5th commercial office project. With her family background in construction, Jacqueline knew that she would have a career in the industry at a young age. During Jacqueline's almost 10 years at Beck, she has modeled strong leadership and project management skills. Her passion for design build shows through her portfolio of projects, including Omni Barton Creek Resort and Spa, the Texas Bankers Association, and Duke University's Wallace Wade Stadium renovation. Jacqueline is an active member of her community, and she serves on the board and executive committee of Real Estate Council of Austin. She is a Leadership Development Council mentor for RICA, a former advisor to the Austin Transportation Partnership, and a member of the American Institute of Architects, Women in Architecture. Jacqueline holds a Bachelor's of Architecture from the University of Texas at Austin and serves on the Board of Visitors for the McDonald Observatory. She has lived in Austin for 15 years and enjoys being outside with her husband, 4-year-old son, and German short-haired pointer. In her spare time, she loves floral arranging and entertaining family and friends. Welcome, Jacqueline. Next on our panel is Claire Walpole. Claire is a staff architect for Austin Habitat for Humanity and has held this role since its inception in 2013. She graduated from LSU with a Bachelor of Architecture in 2001 and was licensed in Texas in 2006, 47 days before her first child was born. With 20 plus years in the industry, including architecture firms, AE firms, and design build, her experience in nonprofit affordable housing has been the most fulfilling and the most flexible. Claire believes that meaningful design and sustainable practices is an integral part of solving the affordable housing crisis in Austin. Claire has lived in South Austin with her husband for 18 years this month. They have 4 children, ages 16, 13, 11, and 8. You can see her selfies with all of them. And they'll be attending 4 different schools in the fall. So say a little prayer for Claire. She's going to spend a lot of time in the car. Our next panelist is Elena Cutshall. Elena is currently the Director of Workplace Interior Studio at Gensler. Elena is a client advocate and relationship steward, project leader, and strategist. Her project experience includes workplace design for corporate headquarters, law firms, technology companies, as well as multifamily work. She weaves design thinking into a comprehensive framework of branded environments, change management, client relations, and workplace strategy. She is also a practice builder, leveraging her diverse project experience and business acumen to engage and partner with high-profile clients. Elena has demonstrated strong leadership skills throughout her career and has a talent for building and motivating strong teams. Elena has been a member of UIL since 2013 and has participated on various UIL programs. In addition to her involvement with UIL, she has been an active participant in the Crew Network since 2013, and in 2021 became Crew Austin president. Currently, she serves in the Crew Network Global Board of Directors. Elena received a Bachelor's of Design in Interior Design from the University of Florida School of Architecture. She is registered and licensed interior designer in Texas and Florida, as well as a LEED accredited professional. Elena resides in Austin, Texas with her husband, Brent, and son, Liam, and enjoys cooking, entertaining, and gardening. Oh, what happened, Carina?
It's okay.
Our last
funny.
panelist is Carina. Normally, she's not upside down.
Okay.
Carina is the founder and principal architect of Austin-based residential architecture firm Restructure Studio and sustainable home plan provider Arbor Plans. After graduating from Rice University with the Bachelor's of Architecture degree, she has worked in the architectural field in Austin since 2003 and launched Restructure Studio in 2010. Carina is recognized in the community for her ability to create designs that are both sustainable and representative of the individual client. Restructure Studio's work has been featured on 2 AIA home tours, as well as in the pages of the Wall Street Journal, and exemplified in Austin Energy Green Building case studies. Restructure Studio has been consistently ranked among Austin's best architects by Austin Home Magazine. Carina is also proud to serve Austin's thriving design community as the chair for AIA Austin's Women in Architecture Committee. In that role, she helped lead the creation of the Call to Action Subcommittee, which just launched an annual scholarship fund for minority students at the University of Texas School of Architecture. And I believe those scholarships were just awarded last night. So that's very
correct.
exciting.
Yes, at the Design Awards, yep.
Yes. So Carina happily resides in South Austin with her husband and 2 active children and a Boston Terrier. So thank you everyone for joining us. It looks like we have about 40 participants on our call today, which is awesome and exciting. So I just wanted to open us up with kind of setting the stage for the discussion today. Movement in the workplace seems like a pretty broad topic, but we think the conversation today is going to kind of really help dial in on what this means for not only our 4 panelists, but what this can mean for you. So we'll start by saying, have you ever asked yourself, am I in the right place for my right now? Coming out of the pandemic years, the AEC industry, like many others, saw its fair share of employee movement. That movement looked like changing jobs for better hours, changing jobs for a more flexible schedule, better pay, better benefits, or just leaving your profession altogether. Now take that crazy shift in our workplace dynamic and layer in being a mom who's known as the personal chef, the driver, the schedule keeper, the house cleaner, etc. The last 2 years have shined a light on this workforce shift that is happening. But if you were to look back further than 2020, we think that you will find that this trend to adapt and flex is just another badge that we wear as moms. Motherhood is hard, and it comes at us in waves. And we're here today to chat with 4 women who are making things happen in our AEC industry while simultaneously getting things done at home. During their season of motherhood, they have all asked themselves, am I in the right place for my right now? And if that answer was no, they adjusted. And that adjustment looks different for each of them, but I just want this to be a reminder that it's okay to pivot while staying true to yourself and your love for both family and career. So with that, we will go ahead and start with our first question. And this is an easy one. So let's go ahead and discuss the trends of 2020 for working moms and what that looked like for your personal experience. We'll start with Elena.
So this was a fun one to talk about when we were having an intro panel call. What happened. And I think the pandemic was the catalyst for where we are today. And as mothers, as professionals, as leaders, we opened Pandora's box. Well, it was kind of like cracked and just stuff went everywhere. And it didn't matter when or how, we had to figure out how to get it all done. Projects had to get done, families had to be taken care of, we had to take care of ourselves. And I think that everything that we've gone through and we've experienced, it's been an interesting social experiment. And I think it's evolved into where we are today. It's been the catalyst for new business policies, work ethics, and also rethinking our own careers. So I think that was like one of the biggest aha moments we had. This really was a catalyst for change, and we continue to evolve from it, I think, right now.
I think one of the challenges that came with COVID was actually just the lack of barrier, right? And so we all got really comfortable with working at strange hours and understanding that our computer may turn back on after our kids went to sleep. And maybe that's an unfortunate thing that has occurred since COVID. I know that I oftentimes leave a little bit earlier so that I can spend some waking hours with my son and find myself turning my computer back on at the end of the day. And before that, definitely wasn't a part of pre-COVID time. So maybe not the best thing, but definitely a more norm that I at least am seeing personally.
For me, I had to deal with a lot of school schedules, 4 different kids from pre-K to 6th grade at that point. And figuring out that not only were all of these schedules different, but also I had some neurodivergent kids, and ultimately figured out that I was too, and have ADHD. And so the pandemic really kind of, I think for a lot of people, made them realize that they had been holding things together just barely, and were able to get some help that they needed, I think, and maybe end up in a better place afterward.
Thanks, Claire. All right, next question, transitioning more specific to work. Have you ever felt like you needed to change jobs to get more support for your current season of life? Whether this was you needed more pay, you needed less stress, you needed more flexibility, etc. And then paired with that, have you ever felt like you needed to change a job to progress your career? Which I think that's maybe a resounding yes from a lot of people in our industry. So Claire, do you maybe want to talk about that?
Yeah, I really specifically stayed at my job through the pandemic and through a lot of child rearing. I think I had my 3rd before I started at Habitat, and had my 4th while I was there. And the support that I got from this job was way beyond anything I had felt at other jobs, and I'm sure it has to do with being a nonprofit. But as far as like flexibility and balance and what I needed, I think we all have a certain number of points of support that we really need. And if you can get, say, 6 from home, you only need 4 from work. But the industry has been kind of geared toward only giving a few at work, because traditionally there's been a lot of support at home from women.
I'd like to jump in here too, Jennifer, real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah.
On the question about changing jobs. This was pre-pandemic, but I had my daughter's 14 now, and when I had her, I was working for a medium-sized firm in town, and it was great. I love my job, and I still love that firm. And I figured after I had my kid that I would go back full force, still working crazy hours. And of course, after she came along, I decided that wasn't quite what I wanted at that time. And so it actually spurred me to start my own firm, to start Restructure Studio within the year of my daughter being born. And so, not to say that that's the answer for everyone, it was certainly much more difficult to start a firm than I mean, I'm kind of glad I didn't know what was involved when I first took that jump, because it was, just so much more work than I ever imagined it would be. But I am glad that I did. And now, like 13 years later, I'm really, really happy with where it is. But yes, I do think that, yeah, you just need to assess what your situation is at the time, and find out what's right for you. And for me at that time, again, this was 13 years ago. You were really expected to be in the office, at your computer for a certain amount of time. There wasn't as much flexibility, I don't think. And for me, I desperately needed the flexibility at that point. So I would say I still worked just as many hours, if not more, but it was on my schedule and in my house with my kids. So.
Yeah, I think that, I had a pandemic pause, and it was a really great time to reflect on what I wanted to do and what I wanted out of my career. Where am I in my, stage in life and in my career? And it also allowed me for the first time to spend a summer with my son since he was born. And that was a big gift that it was unexpected, and I didn't realize just how rewarding that was going to be. And just that open time to think and to be able to really focus on, okay, I'm in the give back stage of my career. I really want to help others, develop teams, and just really be thoughtful about what that next move was going to be, and make sure that it was a good symbiotic relationship, and that both the firm and I were getting like the best out of each other. And I don't think I would have had that moment of clarity had not it been for the pandemic and what we all went through.
Thanks, Elena. Next question, and this one is for Jacqueline. Do you feel more or less career pressure after having kids?
I hate saying it, but I definitely feel more. So I work for a full service design and construction company, and we were a construction company first. And I think it's a historically pretty male dominated industry with a butts and seats mentality. Carina, I think you talked about a little bit about that before, but just that nature of, if you're not here, you miss out. So FOMO, but in a different way. And I had a huge fear of, if I wasn't here and away on maternity leave, that I was going to get passed over for big projects or not thought about or forgotten. And so it felt like to me a little bit more pressure just to stay relevant. And I have a different flexible schedule than a lot of my team, which I'm so very grateful for, but it means that I'm not always here at the same time as everyone else. And it does spark a little bit of a fear of, am I being forgotten? And if it makes me feel more pressure to stay engaged and stay at the front and push harder, for sure.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Yeah, I would say I had a similar experience of after having my daughter, I just felt more of an like need to be around and be involved, and you kind of take a moment to reset your goals and be like, well, I thought I wanted this and now I know I really want this. And so how do I make it happen? Anyone
Yeah, and
else?
I
Oh,
think
go
something
ahead.
we also talked about, Elena, you referenced it when we were kind of preparing a couple weeks ago, but just that this idea of well, now I've lost my train of thought. We were talking about I'm gonna come back to it. Someone else chime in. I'll come back to it.
Okay, we'll transition to our next one, which is how has becoming a mom changed your career goals?
I can speak to that, or Carina, if you
Okay.
want to go.
You go first, Claire. Yeah.
Okay. I went into the architecture field expecting that I would at some point earn a 40 under 40 list, and that I would be so impressive. But, and when I had my first kid at 30, the next 10 years were taken up by children. And obviously that was a choice, but it did definitely change how I still wanted that recognition, but it made me think that maybe I could do it later. Like it didn't have to be right now that I do this. I can only do the kid part at a certain time. So maybe one day, but I do have different goals now, I guess, and it's more about advocacy.
Yeah, I think just kind of building on what I was saying earlier, it was so funny when I was in school, I never ever imagined that I'd work for myself. I always pictured myself working for some big firm, career woman. So as I mentioned earlier, when I had my daughter, that's what really pushed me to go off on my own and start my own firm. And it was so funny. I was talking with a friend of mine who was in my architecture school. And I was like, yeah, I really wish that they had taught us some business classes while we were in school, because that would be really helpful. And he's like, Carina, there were business classes at our program. You just totally ignored them and did not sign up for any. And I just thought it just proved that it just was not on my radar at all. And I really felt like I never pictured myself in that kind of position. So I think it's important that, if you're not a mom yet, or if you're a new mom, or even if you've had kids for a while, I think it's okay for your goals to change. Absolutely. Because I mean, as we all know, your priorities definitely change once the kiddos come around.
Thanks, Carina. And I think it's important too to note that like it's not like you reset those expectations and goals when baby comes day one.
Sure.
Like there's this evolution that happens as, you're going from baby to toddler to elementary to 13-year-old skater boy, Elena. So yeah, there's like different expectations and goals and commitments at each phase. And I think it's just important to remember that like we as women and as moms are allowed to reset what that means for us and what that success looks like.
I remembered what I was going to jump in on, and it kind of goes with all of these things, but we were talking about, we talked about this idea of pressure, but I think there was this other idea of pressure that came with like, as a mom, there's a stigma that you should want to be home and you should want to stay home longer. And I thought that was a really interesting one that we all talked about, and something that I had wished someone would have said to me earlier, even before I have kids, which is, if you don't want to stay home, that's okay. And if you look forward to going back to work, that's okay. And if you don't, that's okay too. And so just kind of pressure is on all fronts. And I just think it's a really interesting, seasons of life. And Carina, you were talking about whether, even if you're not a mom now, it's just something I wish someone would have said. If you want to go back, that's okay.
Yeah, that was when we were talking about me being home with my kid on Friday and having stare downs going, what do you want to do now? And he's just like drooling. And I'm like, I don't know how to entertain a 1-year-old. Like, I know how to do my work though.
Yeah.
Like, know your boundaries, know your
Right.
skill sets.
Right.
Yeah. Know your
Sorry,
strengths.
Jennifer, I got us off. That's
No,
my
it's
fault.
fine. It's fine. So our next topic is about, balance. Everyone always loves to talk about balance. What's your work-life balance, right? So we all know it doesn't exist. There's no magic formula to split your 50-50 home and work. But describe a little bit, really each of you, about what that balance looks like for you between your home life and your work life.
I'll jump in here if that's okay, Jennifer, to start. I actually have two stories that I like to share about work-life balance. Because as you said, it's not actually a thing. I think it's just something that we're always all working on. And the first story that I think is important, when I was pregnant with my second, with my son, I had a toddler at home. I had this foundling architecture firm. I had no idea what I was doing. I felt like I was just not failing on all fronts, but just, struggling with everything. I was exhausted because I was pregnant. And I remember going to an AIA small firms roundtable that was about work-life balance. And it was these other presenters who were further along in their careers. And it was great. Like, they all had these stories about how they had set up their companies now to be able to leave at 4 to go meet their kids at the bus. And, I listened to all these stories, and I felt like I was the only one in the room who did not have their stuff together and could not make it all happen. And I left that meeting and I went to my car and I just burst into tears, like in the AA parking lot. And I think it's important for us to recognize that we always are working on it, but that even if you look really put together, nobody has it all figured out, and that we're all, and that's one of the things I really don't like about social media, is that it's always presenting this best case scenario, best picture of just a fraction of what's actually happening in someone's world. And so anyways, I like to share that with other moms. Like, it's okay to not feel like you know what you're doing or that everything's working out the way you thought it would, because we're all trying to work on balance. And then the other story I like to share is, again, this was just one of the eye-opening moments for me when I was getting this firm started. My daughter was I think she was around 5 or 6, like kindergarten or first grade, and they were doing a Mother's Day project. And the Mother's Day project was, they wanted the kids to just fill in the blank on like some basic questions about their mom. And then they laminated it and they sent it home. And then she was so excited to read it to me. And one of the questions was, what does your mom like to do for fun? And my daughter wrote in the word work. And it just brought me to my knees. I smiled and we looked at the whole thing. I gave her a big hug. And then again, like, I sent her out to go play and I went to my room and I cried because that is not what I wanted my kid to think about. That's what I was, and so it was just this like realization that, like, even kind of what we were just saying, like, it's okay to want to work and to want to be passionate about your job, but I had to learn not to bring it home as much as I was. It was becoming a part of our family life, and I was struggling to let go of all the things that were going on in my head all the time about what I was working on. So anyways, I don't know if that's an answer, but I think it's important for us to share our struggles. And
what about you, Elena? How do you find your balance?
So you have to learn to say no. That was a big one. I'm the oldest of 3, and I'm a pleaser, and it's really hard to say no. And so what I learned was that you can avoid the hard no's, and then you can pivot. You can say, I can't attend this event, but I have this perfect person that can help you. So always provide an answer, an alternative, so that you're still a resource. You're not just saying no, end of story. And I think that's really helped me. It helps you as a leader to develop others, right? Finding, like, you're not always the answer. So who's that up and comer? Who's that rising star? I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, but also just like prioritizing what you really want to do. Don't do everything, like really prioritize what are the important things you want to do and what are the things you want to outsource. So that could be your soft no, here's somebody else, or can we do this instead or another day? Or can I still want to exercise? Can we go on a walk instead of going to cocktails so I can get my workout and we get to catch up? But, you know, really what's important to you and what do you want to outsource? And I think that is like tied with the no's. So, you know, do you want to, you know, cook dinner, or do you want to kick a soccer ball outside? I don't play soccer. I'm just using that as an example. No habla sport. But as an example that other people can relate to.
All right, Jacqueline, what about you?
Mine's kind of dumb maybe, but every Monday morning, and this was a recommendation from my boss actually, he had said, don't come into the office for the first 30 minutes of a normal Monday. Go to a coffee shop and brain dump or get some time to yourself was his recommendation. But what I do is I literally dump anything and everything that I can think of for the entire week, whether it's project oriented or personal, or like, and I have a kid column too, and I just dump it all in a OneNote. And then I spend 15 minutes organizing it by priority. And I do both my personal and my work stuff at the same time and try to make sure that they're equally as important. And there are some things that my son needs or my husband needs that come before a project. And so in a priority list, they go on top. And it's a visual tool that I use all week. And the gratification of checking the check mark feels so awesome. As a task-oriented person, it just like brings me so much gratification. But it's a really easy way for me to balance the priorities I have at work and priorities I have at home. And it also helps just with communication to know, okay, I have a lot of work things that are going to be coming up on Thursday. Hey, husband, I'm going to need some help and I'm going to need you to take over childcare so that I can focus on these days. But I got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So it was just a simple tool that I started a couple of months ago and it's been helping a lot.
Awesome. I feel like I do something similar, but I do it at my desk. So I like the coffee shop mentality.
Yeah, get away, get a treat yourself.
All right, Claire, what about you? I think balance for me is like foundational to this particular job, because when I took the job, they couldn't offer me real architect money because it's a nonprofit, but they could offer me more time. So I am contracted at 32 hours a week. So I leave every day at 3. It could be rearranged at any time. Like I could work just 4 days straight and then take the Friday off or something. But this works really well for me because I get to spend hours in the car picking everybody up and having those conversations that are actually really great in the car. And that's, for me, that just feels really grounding, and being able to connect with them individually and kind of as a little growing group as I pick everybody up.
All right. And I think you guys kind of answered our next question already, but maybe you have something different to share. What are some tools that you implement in your own life to keep all the plates spinning?
I just wrote down all the tools that everybody said. So I'm going to be like implementing that from here on. My 30-minute brain dump is happening on Monday.
Absolutely.
Good.
I've just started syncing my work calendar and my home calendar. This is not a thing. I tried to keep everything very separate before and things were getting lost. So I have just started making sure that all of my actual work appointments and meetings are on my home calendar, so that, or Google obviously, but so that I know when to not schedule doctor's appointments.
Some people were asking in the chat, what's the checkbox tool I was talking about? It's just in OneNote, and there's like a little box at the top that is dumb, and you can just click it and it makes a little check mark. That's all it is. It's nothing super high tech.
No fancy apps.
No fancy apps. I guess to add on to that, I mean, mine's not really a tool, but we kind of talked about this too. My husband and I use the same, this phrase, what's the highest and best use of your time? And we identify for the week, like what needs to get done. And is that my highest and best use of time? And if it's not, let's find somebody else in our family or on our teams that may be better suited to do it. And Elena, you were referencing, are there young up and comers and on your project teams that really could take that task? And so it's kind of been a family mantra, but I've tried to put it into my work as well. It's just, let's all identify what the highest and best use of our time is and really do those things.
And how does that apply to your weekly grocery runs, Jacqueline?
This story is slightly embarrassing, I guess, but I identified that my highest and best use time is not going to pick up the groceries. So I do the grocery order on Sunday nights, and my husband finds time to do it on Monday. And while that might not be his highest and best use either, we just said, I'll take one half, you take the other.
Thanks for sharing that. All right, anyone else on any new tools, tips, tricks?
I don't think it was a tool, but we did talk about, having good support is a good, it's a tool you have to build. But whether it's at home, having a good partner and, being able to divide up, like I grocery shop, you pick it up, or I make the list, you pick it up, or having that someone to lean on, and some of us, families are made all different ways and we all have support different ways, and whether it's, paid support or volunteers or daycare, but, just really surrounding ourselves, like we don't have to be superheroes. We don't have to do it all ourselves. And then also being vocal about those things and helping people understand that we're not the Instagram version of ourselves, that it takes a village, it takes a team at the office, it takes a village to raise our children. Some of us are fortunate enough to have family in town and some of us are not, and we have to figure out ways to keep all the plates spinning and get all the things done and prioritize accordingly. So I think that, that it all ties together. What do we want to outsource? What's our highest and best use, and prioritizing.
Claire, I think me and you have had some conversations about this term, like it takes a village. I personally don't love that term because I feel like I don't know what it means. Yeah. Maybe it's because I have trust issues, like asking my neighbor to help me watch my kid. But I know we've talked about it. So what does that support system look like for you?
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand that support for women with families is support for the entire workforce. Like if there's a woman caring for her children, there's a man somewhere that doesn't have to worry about it. And in fact, the support that's geared toward all employees of families will help mothers. It's incredibly important to realize that men and fathers can and should be caregivers, and it's not a role that we should gatekeep. Like men are no less competent at learning to change diapers and navigating the school system. And we all had to learn those things at one point. We might have learned it when we were the oldest sister changing diapers, but we may not have ever had that experience before, and we had to learn it with our first kid. Employers have just been told for a long time that they only need to offer that extra time to women to bond with their babies. But I think that that's really missing a much bigger point, that men really have to be involved from that very earliest stage in order to make it equal for everybody.
Thanks, Claire. Carina, do you want to hop in there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's such a great point. It was really driven home for me when, like I said, I started this firm, and then my husband realized he hated his career and he wanted to make a change as well. So he decided to go back to grad school in his mid-30s. And at first I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Like, can we keep the tent afloat or the boat afloat, the tent up or whatever? But it was so great because when he was in grad school for his second career, like he was home at night and was cooking all the dinners and was kind of re-engaging with the family in a way that hadn't been as easy for us to manage when he was at his previous job. And now he's got his own, business that he runs himself. He's a therapist. So he sees a lot of clients now. And so now I have to do the dinners again. And I'm like, oh, wait, like he was really good at that. He was a really good chef. And my kids are like, wait, what, mom's cooking tonight? Oh man. But anyways, I just, I like Claire's point that like when you support women, that support needs to be for everybody, because we're all, it's better off for everyone when everyone can be a caretaker. And yeah, it was a funny realization for me around food in our household.
I was in another women in architecture panel, and I think an important message that was shared was that it's not just working mothers, that we are also caregivers in other ways. As we are in different seasons of life, we might be caring for an elderly parent or something like that, and it's just about giving each other and ourselves grace to be able to deal with our family and our personal things while still delivering a great work product and doing right by our clients, our employers, right? So it's about grace and trust, and building the right teams so that, again, you have the trust that everything's going to get delivered and that you're not going to let your family down or your company down or your client down.
Thanks, Elena. So we've talked a little bit about this previously, but we talk a lot of times about when you become a mom, you need to start advocating more for yourself, or maybe you're advocating for your family or your child. So talk a little bit about what does advocating mean for you personally, and who are some advocates in your life? We'll start with Jacqueline.
I think advocating is really just setting by example. And specifically in our architecture practice, we have several young women who are not yet mothers. And my hope as an advocate is to just show, to Carina's point, I don't have all of my stuff together all the time. And that's okay. And this idea of that you have to have it all together all the time is just not real and not normal. And advocating for a realistic lifestyle, I think, is super important. And you know, my boss here at Beck is an incredible advocate for me. Like I mentioned, him telling me to go spend the first 30 minutes of my Monday morning not in the office is not a normal thing to say. But I think he's advocating for my well-being, knowing that I can probably be more productive without people coming up to me and spend that time and just and really invest in scheduling my week. But that's a small thing. It's also big things. And my advocate is asking me about how I'm doing on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, and checking in. And it's not surface level. It's, you know, are you doing fun things for yourself? Are you and your family doing fun things together? It's thinking about the whole person and not just the work person.
Great.
Can
Carina.
I jump in on that too, Jennifer? Sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big part of why I started Restructure Studio was I didn't feel like I had the system I needed to be a working mom. And moving forward I mean, we're still a small firm, there's 5 of us right now, but what I really try to do with it is provide that option of a flexible workplace, kind of like what Claire found with Habitat. I didn't feel like I had that, or I couldn't find it exactly the way that worked for me. And so, I mean, again, I try to advocate for my employees every day. We're all moms. 3 of the 5 of us work part-time. And it's just being able, again, we're small, so we don't have the resources of a big firm, like the really amazing benefit packages and all that. But what I can offer them is flexibility. And so I try to keep that in mind as we move forward. And it's frustrating sometimes because, you know, we'll have a deadline and it's hard to, you know, we just need to focus to get everything done. But I think it's really great that, like, if someone's kid is sick, it's like, okay, I know that you've got to go take care of this, but you know, I know that you'll get the work done later tonight or tomorrow or whenever it needs to happen. And so, yeah, and that's a constant struggle for me as a business owner now too, like to keep the business running, but also advocate for my employees at the same time to maintain the flexibility, but also produce great work and meet our deadlines and everything. And then I guess going back to the whole balance question, it's still a balance to make it happen. But I'm excited to try the experiment at least and see how it goes.
And you touched a little bit about on our next question, what does flexibility at work look like for you? Claire, do you want to start us off with this one? Because you talked about it already a little bit.
Yeah, I did talk about it a lot already. I think, well, I feel like I talk about it all the time. But like having 32 hours a week really is the main deal for me. I also, of course, can work from home if necessary, because the pandemic gave that all to us so well. And it only, it works when you have older kids, when they're sick. It doesn't work as well when you have toddlers that need to be on you and are hot and
sticky, maybe.
And sticky and they're sweaty. So the flexibility is all about taking ownership of what I told people I could do. I know I only work 32 hours a week. I try to keep that really strict because there's just so much other stuff to get done. So I don't overpromise, and we try to build our schedule around what we know we can do. And that having the ability to influence the schedules is really important.
And Jacqueline, what about you? I think flexibility looks a little bit different for you.
Yeah, so early when my son was born, I had a discussion with my team about a different idea. And so I work 9 hours, 4 days a week, and then take half day on Friday so that I can be with my son on Friday afternoons. It's also, I don't have childcare at that time. So it was just a reality that I knew I wasn't going to actually be able to work Friday afternoon anyway. And it was an agreement we made a long time ago, and it has continued, and it may not be like that forever, but for now it's been really amazing because I get to spend a whole afternoon with him, whereas it's usually only a couple of hours at the end of the day. And I'm so very grateful for that flexibility and for that capability to do something a little bit different. I come in early, I leave a little bit earlier, and it's just nice.
And Elena, I think you had a really good point earlier, maybe it was in a previous conversation with you about, when you get further in your career, maybe you just inherently have a little bit more flexibility as a team lead. But maybe you also have a responsibility to be transparent about that flexibility and where you're going and what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that if you're clear about, again, not being a superwoman and, letting people know, hey, I'm going to go do this for 2 hours. I'm going to go to that skate competition. Let's be true to ourselves here. Or I have to go, pick up after a training session, but then I'll be back online during this time and I'll be available to answer questions. I think that it normalizes it, right? Like it shows people that how you're balancing your day, therefore people can learn from you, as opposed to hiding it all and then being like, well, how does she get it all done? How does that happen? And then also something always there's always a sacrifice. Something always has to give. The other day I got an email back from somebody and it was at odd hours. And as part of the auto signature, Jacqueline, you might like this. It said something like, my work hours may not be the same as yours. So do not feel like you need to respond immediately when you get this message, because this person has a flexible schedule, or they might live in a different city and they're a consultant, whatever the case was. But it was really nice. It just kind of gave you permission to not feel like if it came in at 11 o'clock at night that you had to respond immediately. It was just, this is just when I'm working. You get to me when you get to me. And I was like, yeah, I like that, and this person was obviously, catching up on their day and give you permission not to freak out and email immediately.
I love that.
All right, so we have about 4 questions left and about 7 minutes, but I think we can get through them. I'll also remind everybody that's called in to, we're going to do a Q&A session at the end, probably for the last 20 minutes. So if you have any questions, feel free to start dropping them in the chat, and then we will go through those at the end. let's see if anyone has a good story about a moment of positive acknowledgement where your child recognized one of your accomplishments. We'll start with Jacqueline.
Yeah, I have a fun one for this. Like Jennifer mentioned in my bio, my dad owned a construction company in Houston for over 40 years. And one of my favorite things to do is go around his job sites with him and drive in the car and say, oh, my daddy built that. And not that long ago, we were driving up Lavaca and my son said, oh, that's mommy's building at the Texas Bankers Association. And I literally burst into tears. So proud that he even recognized the building, first of all. And second of all, that he was acknowledging some amount of pride that I'm a working architect and I have a hand in shaping the landscape of the city that he lives in. And I hope to further deliver buildings that he can continue to say, oh, mommy was built that, or mommy was a part of that team. It's just something that I did as a kid that it was surreal to hear him say something similar. And it was so fun.
Thanks, Jacqueline. All right, this will be for everyone, but I'll start with Elena. What's been the greatest challenge about being a working mom? Yeah, that's a good one, right?
Just one. The greatest challenge. I think feeling like you're giving everyone your all. That's the biggest challenge that I would think. That I want to make sure that I'm being, the best daughter, the best mother, the best wife, best leader, the best employee. Then that keeps me up at night.
What about you, Carina?
Yeah, very similar, actually. That's kind of like a mantra that I go through at night. I'm like, okay, please let me be a good mom and a good employer and a good designer, architect or whatever. Yeah, I think it, and kind of like we've touched on it already today, but just the balance, like I feel like when I get, like if work piles up too much, then I'm definitely not doing as much with my family as I want to, or if the family, if there's some things going on with my family that need more of my attention, not being able to give that attention back to work. It's just this constant struggle of keeping that all in line. And I think our original WIA founder for Austin, Wendy Dunham-Tita, has a great saying that, and I think we've kind of said this already, but when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And so just that constant, balance of trying to keep everybody happy. It's similar. I think, Elena, you said you're the oldest of 3, is that right? And I'm the oldest of 4, and I'm definitely that people pleaser. I feel like all I do all day is bend over backwards to like keep everybody happy, keep everything stable. And so yeah, it's a big challenge for sure.
Claire, what about you?
Honestly, the biggest challenge is having time or taking time for myself. I can manage to, manage is a strong word. I get to most things by the time most people need the thing. But my personal needs are generally off the table for the most part. And it's something I hope to fix, but in reality, it's going to take a lot of doing.
It goes back to you say yes to one thing, which means you say no to something else. Yeah. All right, Jacqueline, what about you?
Mine is probably similar to what everyone had already described. I feel like also, just wearing a bunch of hats at my firm. I do a little bit of business development. I do a little bit of architecture. I do a lot of things. And the business development portion seems to pull me away in the evenings probably the most, and feel a super pang of guilt. The next morning when my son asked me, where were you? And I think that's really hard because at the same time, those activities, being out with people, that brings me energy as a huge extrovert. love engaging with others. I love being out. I love participating in those things and furthering my career. All of those things are priorities for me. And so it's kind of hard, you want to be present and you want to do your job well. I mean, it's trying to be the best to everyone is probably what it is. Just that guilt level of wanting to do both things at the same time.
All right. Do you guys have any advice for other women who struggle with this balance, but who also really value both their family and their home life, but also their career? Go Claire.
I do. I really encourage everyone to have all of the conversations with your partner about how you'll split household duties early and have those conversations over and over. I suggest reading the book Fair Play by Eve Rodsky. There's also a documentary. There's so much more to running a house than people even think about. And there's no reason these things can't be divided more evenly than we're used to. And the mental load is so real, and it doesn't have to all be your job. Being able to not think about the things that are still ticking around in the back of your head and know somebody else has it covered is really huge.
Claire, I feel like that plays into your original comment about merging work and personal calendars. Something that I really struggled early when my son was born was better communication with my partner and letting him know that I had things after work on Wednesday and Thursday of this week and springing on him the day before. It's something I've definitely gotten a lot better with the merging of the calendar with my OneNote. And just being more transparent and more communicative than you ever thought you needed to be. Because if you tell your partner on Sunday, hey, I have these things, at least to your point, Claire, you can know I have this covered, or at least that portion is handled and I can focus on what I need to focus on. I think that was a huge challenge for me early in motherhood.
I feel like
Carina?
one thing we can do in the office, I'm sorry, I jumped in.
No, go ahead.
I just thought it was like a deep in thought. Is treat others how we want to be treated, in the sense of if someone's experiencing a challenge and we can help divert their scope of work in order for it to get done so they can go take care of their emergency or something happens, just like building in that flexibility, but using all our powers for good and not evil. And like it, you can be like, oh, your kid's always sick, and just give somebody a really hard time over something that they can't control. Or you can say, you know what, it happens, you just started daycare, welcome to the club, and try to find somebody to cover for them so that they don't have to feel like double crappy, right? So to give people grace, and we need to do everything we can to teach others how we want to be treated.
Yeah, I love what everyone has said so far, and this might be a little bit TMI, but I'm also I'm married to one. I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I think, if you ever get to the point where, like, I struggled with a lot of anxiety, about my job, and also, am I being a good mom? Am I there for my kids? Am I getting all this stuff done? And, I went to therapy for about 5 years. I probably need to get back into it now, but it was such a huge weight off my shoulders, and really healthy. And it just having someone else just even reflect back to me all the stuff that I was saying that I didn't realize was going on in my life. It really helped me make some changes in the way that I organize my life and the way that I organize my business and the way I prioritize. Same as you, Claire, like I was the last thing on my list whenever it came to all of the things that had to get done. And I'm still working on it, but that was one thing that really came out of therapy for me, was like, oh, I literally do nothing for myself. And I know that's not healthy. We need to change that. So anyways, I think that if you ever feel like you get to that point, it's such a great tool. So
Thanks, Carina. So that brings us to our last question, and I'm going to actually cut it in half and eliminate the portion about what are your professional goals, because I feel like we've talked a lot about that. And I like your segue of find some time for yourself. So just a quick roundtable because we also want to transition to Q&A. What are some personal goals you've set for yourself?
Well, my husband and I would like to have another child, grow our family. So that's a personal goal that's high on the list right now. We're going through fertility treatments right now, and I feel like it's something that a lot of women may feel shame about or uncomfortable talking about. But I have found, I ran into a woman in the garage last night who I don't even remember how it came up, but she is going to Texas Fertility Center. So am I. I felt so much comfort just being able to talk to this human who is in the exact same position. And it's insane how many women are going through it and don't talk about it and keep it to themselves, and rightfully so if that's what's best for you. But if it feels good to talk to someone who's going through the same thing, I would say open up. It'll only make you feel better.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Elena, what about you? Personal goals. What are you working on that's not work?
That's not work. I had a short-term goal. We celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary in 2020, and there was a little pandemic that happened, so we weren't able to celebrate. And we wanted to go to Europe. So our short-term goal is to get our butts in gear and get to Europe in July, which has been a small feat because of trying to keep work and personal and everything going, and arranging all the family members and all the planes, trains, and automobiles that it takes to have your child cared for so that you can enjoy some time alone. I feel like that's been a huge goal, and it's taken a lot of work to get there. And who knows, I might want to be president of Crew Network. I might want to, I continue to grow and develop within my office here currently. So I don't know, a lot. The sky's the limit, and that pleaser, right? Trying to
no limitation.
get it all done.
Claire, what about you?
I guess my personal goal is to get everybody in my house settled enough that I can go back to singing. That's my outlet. It's I was in a big group for a long time, and I just had to bow out this season. I can't do it. So hopefully I can get everybody's mental health in order, and everybody passing all their classes, and there's a lot, but I'm hopeful that I can get it taken care of. And part of that's going to be working on mental load stuff with my husband. I mean, we definitely don't have it figured out. I have a whole lot of great ideas, but it's not figured out yet.
Thanks, Claire. And Carina, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's real basic, but my short-term goal right now is to figure out how to get more exercise in my life. Similar to how Claire's a singer, I love dancing, and I just have had so much trouble finding time to fit in a dance class or to fit in a workout, or I love the idea of let's go for a walk instead of grabbing a cocktail, just to get outside more. Because that same thing, I always put myself last, and so yeah, I'm trying to build that back into my schedule now that we're post-pandemic and really coming back to work. And then my long-term goal, and it's still decades away, but I'm I gotta figure out how to retire one day. I want to get that. I love my job, I love what I do, but I know I don't want to be doing it forever. So and I feel that's something I have to start planning for early. So and I have no idea how. So.
I appreciate the honesty, Carina. I think that's a good goal for everyone. Figure out how to retire.
Yeah.
From your current job and maybe transition to something else.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all. We have one question in the chat. So while we're working through this one, feel free to just drop some more in there. So the first one comes from one of my really good friends who's calling in from San Antonio. Shout out to Madeline. She is a mom of 3, and we went to architecture school together. And Madeline has transitioned to stay-at-home momming, but also does a lot of freelance graphic design stuff on the side. So her question is, Did you guys have moms that worked outside the home, and how did that influence your parenting and choice to maintain your career?
I did. But Jackie, you can go.
No, you go ahead, finish.
My mom was a nurse, so she worked like overnight. And then when I came home from school, we would fold clothes watching, those soap operas. Anyway.
General Hospital.
Yes, that's the one. Exactly. But what really inspired me for her was that when she was young, she didn't want to be a nurse or a teacher. She wanted to be an auto mechanic. And she didn't have the chance to do that. They pigeonholed her into either teaching or nursing. And she, after she did some nursing and we ultimately owned a dry cleaner, and that was like her thing. She went back and learned welding, and she like made some sculptures at some point, and like proved to us over and over how talented she was, but she just never did it in a job the way that maybe we can now. And so she was really encouraging for getting into a STEM or a male dominated career. So that was really helpful for me.
Thanks, Claire. Jacqueline?
Yeah, my mom was a full-time working mom. She was in interior design, but specifically art consulting in Houston for my whole life. And it was hugely impactful to me as a woman, and watching my mom be a working mom and seeing her do all the things. And she made it look easy. And I remember when I first started my job, I said, "Mom, how did you do this? You made it seem so easy." And she's like, "It was not." Which I wish we would have talked about earlier, but I wanted to tell a story about something that was really impactful to me. I was on a walk with a very dear friend of mine in college whose mom stayed at home her whole life with all of her siblings. And when we were talking about our career goals, I had mentioned, I can't wait to be an architect. I can't wait to hopefully work in design build and be a part of construction projects and show my son all these, or my future child, all these things. And she said, "Well, wait, don't you want to be home with your child so that you can be a part of their lives?" And I remember being brokenhearted by that comment, because I never once felt like my mom wasn't a part of my life just because she worked. And I said that to her, and I think it really changed her perspective as well. She is now a working lawyer and has 3 children and 1 on the way. Granted, her schedule is a little bit different, but she tells me often she had never seen another perspective or heard another perspective. And I hadn't either. And I just think it's so interesting that you're so accustomed to whatever your parents did, that I think it's important to talk to our children about there are many options in the world. Mommy goes to work, but not all mommies go to work. Daddy goes to work, not all daddies go to work. And that's okay.
That's funny. You talk about your mom being an interior designer, and I was like, I had like zero influence to my career. My mom was an aerobics instructor at one point. She was an AM radio DJ. She was a medical rep, swim instructor, Spanish instructor. Like, she had all the jobs, right? And like some of them we had to tag along to, and like the aerobics studio, that was interesting. But we were part of her life, whether she was a medical rep and working all day and we had to sit in the balcony and wait for her to get home to open the door to let us in, or we were getting physical in the 80s, but I, like you said, you never felt like your mom was not part of your life because she was working, and I felt very loved and taken care of in my parents' work.
I'm going to jump in super fast. I guess my mom did not work, but it was really interesting. There was never an expectation that I'm one of 4 girls. I'm the oldest of 4, all women, and there was never an expectation that we wouldn't work. Like, my sisters are a doctor, a lawyer, I'm an architect, and then the 4th one is in fashion. And so it's interesting that, like, even though our mom was home with us all the time, there were very high expectations that we would be finding out whatever was our passion, and what we wanted to follow, which I'm grateful to her for, and I think that she would have been fine too if we decided that, we didn't want to be working. And I appreciate that flexibility, but I am proud to be able to demonstrate that to my children, and my daughter. What does this look like? And how can you make it work? So.
Thanks, Carina. All good answers. Good question, Madeline. All right, our next question is from Mallory Jordan. Can y'all please talk about how your path to licensure worked with your motherhood journey? Did you become licensed before, during, or after being a mom? And how did all that hash out?
I have a fun story about that. I became an interior designer prior to children, but I wanted to go ahead and get my LEED certification before my child was born. And so I remember studying for the LEED exam, and I would read an entire chapter, and I had pregnant brain. And the next day, it was like Groundhog Day. I had nothing stuck, and I would just bawl like, I can't learn anything. I'm so stupid. And I remember, but it was just like the pregnant brain, like nothing would stick. And I studied, and my husband and I were studying together, and we took the test, like sitting next to each other in the testing center. And I remember him like saying a little prayer after he was done. He's like, I hope she passes because I don't know what's gonna happen. And I did, and he like his sigh of relief was heard throughout the room. That was pretty funny. But like, yeah, don't study when you're pregnant. That's my only piece of advice.
Oh, that's so funny. I literally got licensed 47 days before my first was born, which was actually 41 days before my 30th birthday, which met like 3 goals at once. Because like I had these big goals. By 30, I want to be married and have a kid and have my license. And I did it. And then I had no idea what to do after that. So I had to restructure all of my goals. But yeah, it was very important to me. I knew that once I started having children, there was no way that I was going to be able to get licensed after that. So I was really, really pushy with my employers about getting the experience that I needed and making sure I had all of that covered. And I had all of my, I think at the time we called it IEP. I'm not really even sure what it is anymore. Done before we moved from Virginia to Texas. And I took all my tests right when we came to Texas and had to take one of them twice. And that one I passed on December 26th and my birthday was January 1st. So
You have a really good memory, Claire. And
that
kudos
was
to you for
important.
just,
I mean,
like,
those
not
numbers,
knowing.
that one thing was really important. Like before I left Virginia, I got my LEED certification because I knew going to Austin, I was going to have something that, some kind of certificate that showed I was green and I knew what I was doing. It turns out I don't need it here so much, but it's okay.
All right, anyone else?
Yeah, I was going to say I got licensed before I had my children. Not to say that I think you should, if you want to get licensed, please go for it and do it at any point in your career and find your resources and find your support system around that. But I will say I was very fortunate that I had a good friend this was before I started Restructure, and I had a good friend in my firm who, I'll give her a shout out here, Ada Corral. She's amazing. She has her own firm here in Austin as well. She was starting to take her licensing exams. We became close friends quickly, and she said, we're going to do this together. And we knocked it out in a year. And I am so grateful to her, because if she hadn't done that, I don't know that I would have had that, to get it done so quickly. And so, yeah, if you can find someone to do it with, to go through the experience with, and yeah, I failed exams too, at least a couple, and we just kept going and we just pushed through. And so yeah, I think if you can get it done before you have children, that would be my recommendation, but obviously that doesn't work for everybody. And so just, yeah, find your partners and your support system and do it.
And we have one superwoman comment here from Sada. She took one of her tests 4 days before her due date. So, that's very impressive. That's like, there was a news story about a woman that like took her bar exam like right after she had her kid, no, I don't want to do that. That sounds awful. Okay. Another question. We have about 15 minutes left. This one is good. This one is from Ingrid Gonzalez Featherston. How do you help your younger staff understand the responsibility differences that come with being a parent at work and the necessary flexibility that brings with it without seeming like it's favoritism? So there's a lot of complexity with that, right? Jacqueline, you want to answer that one first?
I think it's really hard, and I think it's really just about the culture that you create. Our office is, we try to be as flexible as possible and say, you need to get your stuff done. When you get it done is up to you. We're not your babysitter, and it's on you to build your schedule and figure out when that needs to happen. I think a couple have talked about maybe you need to leave for something, and that's okay. And that means that maybe you're turning your computer on later, or maybe it happens on a weekend. We try to be as flexible as possible in that way and say, this isn't just for parents or working parents. This also applies if your dog has to go to the vet, which you're a dog parent. Or maybe you have some repair being done to your house. I mean, being an adult is hard in and of itself. There's all kinds of things that come up. And I think it's about transparency and saying, I have this thing and I need to do it. And it's on you to go do it. But there are work items that need to get done, and figure out when that can happen.
Yeah, I think that is a great question. And as you said, Jacqueline, it is very difficult. But yeah, I agree with you 100% that, it's not just about being a parent. Like you might have you might be a caretaker for someone, for your parents, or you might have some other extenuating circumstance in your life that requires flexibility. And I think the important part that I've learned is that as long as everyone knows that the expectations for everyone in the firm are the same, that's the most important thing. Like, hey, just because we're saying it's okay to go take care of your child or your dog or do this, doesn't mean you're off the hook to get something done, or that if you need the flexibility now, then we're expecting you to step in to help somebody else out the next time that they need some flexibility. If we need to finish up your deadline, and then you can come and help us finish the next one. So I think it's that clear understanding that the expectations are the same of everyone. It's just, yes, the flexibility might need to be adjusted depending on your circumstance.
Thanks, Carina. This question is from Ashton, specifically for Carina. As a business owner, how did you approach your parental leave for your second pregnancy?
Thanks, Ashton. That was a tough one. Similar to, I think, Sarah and everybody else who had those great stories about taking their tests. I was meeting up until the day before I went into labor. I was working up until the day before. Whereas with my first pregnancy, when I worked for somebody else, I was like, oh, I need to be done. I need time and space to figure out what's going on. And then when I worked for myself as a business owner, I just was like, because I knew, I think also with the second, you have a better idea of what's coming. You've already got a kiddo at home. So I was just trying to cram in as much as I could before the delivery, before the due date. And so yeah, fortunately, my son was born on a Saturday. So I got a full week of work in right before he got there.
Any regrets, Carina? Would you have done it differently?
I don't think so. That's a good question. Again, as we've talked about, I struggle with taking time for myself, but like I think a lot of us do. I don't think I would have done it differently because I did take maternity leave, and I had to get that with all my clients settled out. And at that time, I didn't have as many employees as I do now. I had a couple. It was very flexible, so everyone kind of knew the projects were kind of going on hold for a few months, and so that was tough. So I was really. It felt better for me mentally to feel like I really got everything done to the best of my ability before I went on this break and got to welcome my second child. So that was just for me personally. And I do feel like I got everything in that I wanted to. And then I was able to actually take a couple months without feeling super too guilty and too strung out about trying to wrap things up. So.
Thanks. All right, our last question is from Beth. Any tips on handling pregnancy in your workplace? When did you tell your employer you were expecting? How did you manage symptoms before you told them? Did you mostly work from home?
I can go first. Okay, go ahead.
Just because I was extremely sick in the early stages of being pregnant, and I was also kind of worried about how people would treat me. Like Jacqueline, our office is predominantly male, and they have kids, but they also, a lot of them have stay-at-home wives. And so it felt like there was a little bit of this stigma that, maybe, oh, I wasn't going to come back. And so I really wanted to push that out as long as possible. But also I felt like death coming to work every day. And so I bought those like pressure point wristbands and would wear them under long sleeve shirts. And I would, eat anything that would make me feel like I was not going to vomit up whatever was in my stomach. So yeah, it wasn't great, but I made it to like exactly 12 weeks, which also like, I guess is pretty normal, but felt like the longest 12 weeks of my entire life. And no, I did not work from home because that wasn't a thing. And so I actually had my daughter in April of 2020. And COVID was happening. And I remember people talking about Seattle shutting down. And then it literally was like clockwork. People started coming to my desk one by one, telling me to go home because I was pregnant and it wasn't safe and whatever. And I just was like, mind your own business. Like, it's fine. And then I got home and I had a conversation with my husband and I kind of was like, maybe it would be nice if I could just like work from home. Like the baby's due in 3 weeks and that would be great. But we hadn't really worked from home. We had the capability, but nobody did it. So I took the time to set it up and I sent everyone a note and said, oh yeah, I think I'm definitely going to stay home. And then literally 2 weeks later, like the world shut down. And then 10 days after that, I had a baby. So it worked out. But yeah, it was a weird thing. So I don't know if that answered your question or made you feel any better about yourself, but just know that most people don't have a wonderful pregnancy. And they're sick and they have to have an awkward conversation with their boss about it. But yeah.
Yeah, mine was similar. There was no such thing as work from home. I actually was full-time on a job site when I got pregnant and in a job site trailer full of guys. And I told my employer at 14 weeks, and really, I don't know even why I waited that long because they all kind of figured it out really fast when I had 15 boxes of goldfish and all kinds of snacks accumulated at my desk. But that was one of the things that helped me, I guess, was having snacks readily available. But in hindsight, and now I just told all of you that I'm going through fertility, I feel like I definitely won't wait that long this second go around. I mean, in fact, most of the people in my office know that I'm trying to get pregnant, and it'll probably be pretty obvious sooner rather than later. That's a personal thing. I feel like maybe again with the second one, I'm not as reserved, or I know what's coming, and so maybe just more willing to share earlier. But at the first time, the thing that helped me the most was snacks, having snacks.
I'd actually like to jump in on what you were saying, Jacqueline. When I got pregnant for the first time, I was working for another firm who I loved, and they were great employers. And I actually, before I got pregnant with my daughter, I had a lot of miscarriages. I went through like 5 before we had her, and she was actually the last one. My husband was like, "If this doesn't work, he's like, I can't watch you go through this again." And I'm only telling you all that because I didn't tell my employers at the time that I was trying to get pregnant, or that or for any of the first 5 that I was pregnant. And in hindsight, because the miscarriages were so like emotionally awful to go through, I kind of wish I told them, because they could tell that I was moody and that something was going on and that I was really upset. But again, this is such a personal decision for everybody. And you know, a lot of them I only found out I had a miscarriage because I was trying to get pregnant. And so I was paying super close attention to like all the pregnancy tests. I might not have even noticed some of them ended so early, but you know, one of them went pretty long. And so anyways, I think if you have a good relationship with the people that you work with, and you feel like they're a supportive team, I think it is like, if you want to tell them, you know, after the first, you know, 12 weeks or even earlier, I wish I had had that support at work. And I think they would have offered it if I had shared with them. So anyways, when I did get pregnant, finally, sorry, again, but it worked out. You know, I told them pretty quickly because I just wasn't sure what was going to happen. So I think you just need to assess your situation and decide what's best for you.
I'll say after when I was expecting my first, my boss really wanted to know, like, how long are you going to be gone? And I had no idea at my first if I was going to stay home for a while or if I was going to come back to work. And I don't feel like that's a very uncommon feeling. Like, I don't know what this is going to bring. And like, maybe I can stay home for a while. But they really needed to know. And I maybe was too honest in saying that I don't know. And I should have just said, yes, I'm coming back. Because I no longer had that job. When at, I don't know, 2 months in, I was like, I am not staying home. And so I guess that would be just a suggestion, perhaps, that if you have any feeling that you may not want to stay home with your children, to make sure you have them hold your job for you. That was a mistake I made with that one, I think. But it turned out fine ultimately. I don't know, that's all.
All right, well, I think we're about out of time. We have about 1 minute left. So I just want to say thank you guys for being a participant in this panel and sharing your stories and getting personal. I know it means a lot to everyone on this call to kind of hear a variety of perspectives from not only successful women in our profession, but also moms who are kicking butt, man. This is hard. So kudos to y'all, and thank you for everyone on this call. We really appreciate you giving up your lunch hour and then some. So thank you. The session is being recorded and I believe will be archived somewhere. So we will follow up and I'm sure it'll be on the AIA website. So thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday.